If you had a computer in the 1990s, you didn't just use it. You coexisted with it. It was a presence in the room, loud and unpredictable, humming and whirring like a machine that had its own personality. You didn't just power it on, you waited for it to cough and crank itself awake, groaning through the pause screen before finally landing on a familiar blinking cursor or that grainy blue splash of Windows 3.1. The experience was tactile. You physically inserted floppy disks. You manually typed out commands. You configured autoexec.bat and config.sys files by hand and crossed your fingers with every reboot. These weren't background appliances like today's smartphones or smart TVs. These machines required attention, patience, and ritual. Their clunkiness was part of the charm. You learned their moods, you celebrated their good days, and cursed their crashes. But through all their quirks, they offered access to a world that felt infinite. You could create, explore, tinker, and connect. You could lose entire weekends experimenting with new shareware, writing simple code, or talking to people in AOL chat rooms you'd never meet in person. Even if your PC could barely render a web page, it gave you a window into something much bigger than yourself. It wasn't just about the technology. It was about discovering something that felt truly new. Back then, your desktop computer was usually a hulking beige rectangle sitting on or beneath a rickety desk, flanked by a monitor the size of a small microwave. This wasn't just a design choice. The size was necessary. The technology inside took up space, and the cases were often filled with components that ran hot and loud. Processors, like the 386 or 486 chugging along at speeds that seem laughable today. 33 or maybe 66 megahertz, if you were lucky. RAM was precious. And even a small upgrade from 8 megabytes to 16 megabytes could be the difference between a game working or crashing. Hard drives were another story. A computer with even 500 megabytes of space felt like it could store the world. 1 gigabyte was enormous. IBM's 9345 Sawmill hard drive with its magneto-resistive heads could store 1.5 gigabytes and was nothing short of revolutionary. The sound of it spinning up was unforgettable, like a tiny jet engine revving in your room. And you couldn't just rely on hard drives alone. Floppy disks were still essential. The 5.25-inch ones were fragile, easy to bend or smudge, while the newer 3.5-inch disks felt more reliable, though their storage space was laughably tiny by modern standards. You saved games, schoolwork, and drivers on them, always labeling them carefully, always praying they wouldn't get corrupted. The monitors were cathode ray tubes that took up more desk space than most modern PCs. They came in black and green or sometimes orange monochrome, unless you had the money for a full-color VGA display. Even then, you were usually staring at 640 by 480 resolution, and anything above that was advanced territory. Upgrading to a graphics card was a big deal. You didn't just plug it in, you installed drivers, set jumper pins, and adjusted refresh rates. Your reward was seeing your games and applications in vibrant, glorious color, which made even the clunkiest interface feel exciting. Of course, entering the fledgling world of computing was a real financial commitment, with the price of a full computer setup starting at over $1,500 in the early 90s for a basic system and dropping to under $1,000 for entry-level models by the decade's end. Prices were driven by rapid technological advancements, with new processors, more RAM, and larger hard drives constantly entering the market. As an example, 14 to 17-inch CRT monitors alone ranged from $300 to $860. Keyboards were from $25 to over $50, while a mouse, often bundled with other items, cost anywhere between $20 and $50. If you wanted the full setup, scanners, printers, modems, zip drives, and multimedia kits were also available for all your needs if you were willing to apply the cash. Inkjet printers included the HP DeskJet, the Canon BubbleJet, the Epson Stylus, and the Lexmark, with prices ranging from between $500 to $600, though by 1994, price wars brought street prices down to under $500. More advanced and luxurious were laser printers offering high-speed monochrome text, with options ranging from the HP LaserJet to the Brother, Panasonic, and Apple LaserWriter. These were usually for commercial settings like offices, with prices starting in the early 90s for at least $1,000 and rising to over $1,600, though by 1997, budget-friendly versions like the HP LaserJet 6L launched for $400. And of course, there was the classic dot matrix, rugged and noisy, but great for carbon copy forms. Options included the Epson MX80, the Okadata Microline, and the Star Micronics, all of which cost generally between $150 and $300. Of course, no 90s computer scene was complete without a scanner, used less for actual work and more for scanning your buttocks to terrify your colleagues. Standalone scanners were a significant investment, often requiring a dedicated SCSI card or a parallel port connection. Flatbed scanners were used for photos and documents and included the HP ScanJet, Microtech, Canon CanoScan, and Epson. High-end models in the early 90s could cost thousands of dollars, though by the late 90s, consumer-grade color scanners dropped to around $200 to $400. Handheld scanners, meanwhile, were a cheaper manual alternative for small images, typically costing around $100 to $200. For the real enthusiast, additional equipment was a must, especially when transferring and storing your precious files, documents, and photos. Before USB flash drives, high-capacity removable storage was critical for moving large files, with the iOmega zip drive being the must-have accessory, storing an entire 100 megabytes on a single disk. For such excellence, you'd be expected to pay $199 during its launch year of 1995, with individual disks costing $19.95. Modems, on the other hand, were necessary for the information superhighway, with a 14.4 kilobit per second modem costing roughly $100 to $150 in the early 90s. But by 1997, 56 kilobit per second modems were the standard, often priced at $100 to $200, with brands including US Robotics, Hayes, and Zoom. Multimedia kits, meanwhile, were bundles containing a CD-ROM drive, sound card, and speakers to upgrade a silent PC, with brands including the Creative Labs Sound Blaster that were priced from between $300 to $500 for the full kit in the mid-90s. New computers typically came with either a 1-year or 3-year manufacturer's warranty covering repairs or replacement of faulty components. Extended warranties and third-party support packages were also available for an additional cost, offering enhanced or quicker coverage. Deals often included a variety of pre-installed software, such as the Windows operating system and basic applications, while common optional extras bundled with deals included printers and scanners. Budget-conscious consumers could purchase no-name or store-brand PCs, which were significantly cheaper than major brands but offered similar specifications, while major retailers offered credit options to help consumers purchase systems. The major brands of the day were Dell, Compaq, Packard-Bell, Hewlett-Packard, Apple, Acer, and AST. Apple offered models like the Macintosh Classic, while PC brands offered systems based on Intel processors, including 286, 386, 486, and Pentium. Brands for monitors included Sony and Samsung, while keyboards and mice were often branded by companies like Logitech or were generic unbranded items. For all these, you could pick them up at Fry's Electronics, Circuit City, and Best Buy, traditional retailers like Sears, and specialty or membership stores like The Good Guys and warehouse clubs like Costco. Of course, if you wanted to save the gas mileage, you could also get your new computer package delivered direct to your front door through manufacturer mail order, with companies like Dell selling via phone and mail order. When Microsoft released Windows 3.0 in 1990, it marked the beginning of the PC becoming more accessible, at least visually. You no longer had to memorize arcane DOS commands or rely entirely on typed inputs. The graphical user interface was a revelation. You could click on icons, open windows, drag and drop files. Of course, the system was far from seamless. Crashes were frequent. Installing new software could break everything. But when it worked, it felt like the future. Windows 3.0 introduced multitasking. Sort of. You could run several programs at once, like a primitive form of modern tabs, but each one drained the system, and you could feel the slowdown instantly. By 1995, Microsoft released Windows 95, and the world shifted again. It introduced a proper Start menu, plug-and-play support for hardware, and a smoother, more user-friendly interface that seemed to finally justify all those early upgrades. With it came a suite of bundled applications that now feel quaint, but were mind-blowing at the time. Encarta 95 was like having an entire encyclopedia on your computer, complete with pictures, audio, and video clips. The Spider-Man cartoon maker let kids create animations, dragging and dropping characters into clunky but endlessly entertaining stories. And then there were multimedia showcases like the Buddy Holly music video by Weezer embedded on the Windows 95 disc, which played at a grainy resolution, but still blew minds simply because it worked. These weren't just programs, they were cultural events, little proof points that this computer in your room wasn't just a tool, it was a portal. It was entertainment, education, and expression all rolled into one. There was a particular kind of wonder in those early days, a sense that you were standing at the threshold of something vast. Each floppy disk you inserted, each CD-ROM you installed, each beep or error code or modem screech felt like part of a grander narrative unfolding. You didn't just use a computer in the 1990s. You experienced it fully, deeply, and sometimes frustratingly. And for many of us, it left a lasting imprint. The learning curve was steep, the progress slow, but the payoff was unforgettable. It wasn't just tech, it was an adventure. In 1990, Tim Berners-Lee quietly planted the digital seed that would grow into the modern internet. Working at CERN on a sleek, minimalist NeXT computer, he built the first web browser and editor, aptly named World Wide Web. At the time, it was more concept than revolution, just a strange new tool that let you click words and open up documents across machines. It had no flashing graphics, no search engines, and certainly no video pop-ups. But hidden within that bare-bones interface was an idea that would reshape everything. By the late 1990s, the web had become a cultural wildfire. Netscape, Navigator, and Internet Explorer became household names, introducing millions to the strange, exciting, and often frustrating experience of being online. You could hunt down music files one by one on early file-sharing platforms like Napster, sit for minutes waiting for a 500-kilobyte image to load, or stream movie trailers in grainy resolution that looked like animated postage stamps. Sites were chaotic and cluttered, full of spinning GIFs under construction banners, and flashing text. It was raw, unfiltered, and open. If you knew some HTML, you could build your own page. If you had a modem and enough patience, you could explore a vast world no one had fully mapped. Internet access back then was something you had to earn. You connected through dial-up modems that made a distinctive, screeching handshake sound as they linked to your local ISP. It was a sound that became instantly recognizable, a weird symphony of static, buzzes, and digital pulses that meant you were going online. Speeds hovered around 28.8 or 56 kilobits per second, and any incoming phone call could knock you offline in an instant. Many families kept strict time limits on internet usage, not just because it tied up the phone line, but because you were billed by the minute. A long night of chatting in a Yahoo room or browsing fan pages could turn into an expensive shock when the phone bill arrived. Despite all that, or maybe because of it, going online felt like stepping into a secret dimension, one filled with niche communities, mysterious websites, and a dizzying sense that the future was being written in real time. Storage in the 1990s was a constant struggle. Hard drives were small, maybe a few hundred megabytes if you were lucky. Every download was a choice. Every saved file had to be justified. You learned to compress files, delete ruthlessly, and pray for more space. Into this tight squeeze came magneto-optical disks, a curious hybrid of magnetic and laser technology that offered a kind of miracle. You could write and rewrite the same disk up to 1 million times. They were housed in sturdy cartridges, which made them feel a bit like sci-fi tech, and they outclassed floppy disks in durability and speed. They also had better capacity than CDs and could be used like hard drives in a pinch. While not exactly common in every household, they represented a glimpse of what was coming. Media that was fast, flexible, and massive by the standards of the day. Around the same time, computers began to transform from simple tools into multimedia machines. The term multimedia PC became a selling point, indicating a system that could handle audio, video, and interactive content. Standards were created to certify these PCs, ensuring they came equipped with a CD-ROM drive, sound card, and enough memory to handle the new wave of digital experiences. Creative Lab's Sound Blaster Pro was the crown jewel of sound cards, replacing the tinny beeps of the PC speaker with music, voice, and real sound effects. Your games no longer just flashed text at you. They yelled. They had soundtracks. They told stories. And if you had a good enough setup, your computer didn't just run programs. It came alive. Games in the 90s were gritty, experimental, and often barely held together by code. They pushed the hardware to its limits and sometimes passed them. Wolfenstein 3D introduced many players to the idea of the first-person shooter, turning flat pixel art into twisting corridors filled with enemies. Doom took that formula, doubled down on speed and violence, and created a cultural phenomenon. Getting Doom to run on your machine was half the game. Tweaking your autoexec.bat file, freeing up enough base memory, and getting the sound to work was a rite of passage. If you pulled it off, you felt like a wizard. Other games, like Commander Keen, brought humor and color into the platforming genre. While titles like Chex Quest, yes, a game packaged inside a cereal box, became cult classics, remembered more fondly than many mainstream releases. Shareware was everywhere. You get a floppy disk from a friend or find one taped to a magazine. You'd play a few levels, get hooked, and then either mail a check to some mysterious P.O. box or spend hours trying to find the full version somewhere online. Bulletin board systems, BBS, were gold mines of software, discussions, and digital camaraderie. Later, you might burn a few games onto a CD and trade it with your friends at school. Lag, frame drops, graphics glitches, you accepted them, you learned to play around them. What mattered was the game itself, the feeling of exploration, of figuring it all out on your own. There were no forums to guide you, not yet, no walkthroughs unless you printed one out, and no patches unless you knew exactly where to look. And so the games of the 90s weren't just about fun. They were part puzzle, part performance, and part personal challenge. Running them, tweaking them, sharing them. These acts were all extensions of the play itself. It was a time when games felt like underground art, passed from hand to hand, living on machines that always seemed slightly too slow and slightly too old, but somehow always got the job done. In the early 1990s, computers were still a novelty in most homes. Having a PC in your living room or bedroom meant you were either a tech enthusiast, a professional who needed one for work, or part of a family that had invested in what was still seen as an expensive luxury. Many kids experienced computers not at home, but at school, if they were lucky enough to attend a school with a computer lab. These labs were often stocked with aging Apple II machines, or, by the late 90s, the iconic, translucent, candy-colored iMacs that looked like futuristic jelly beans. Children sat in rows, clicking away in programs like Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing, which gamified keyboarding before anyone used the word gamified. Others drew wild rainbow scribbles in KidPix, a program that turned digital art into noisy, colorful chaos. And of course, there was Oregon Trail, the educational game that managed to teach American history while frequently killing your entire virtual family with dysentery. It was equal parts fun and frustration, and it left a lasting impression on a generation. At work, things were more serious, but just as formative. Computers had started to become standard equipment in offices, especially for tasks like word processing, spreadsheets, and database entry. The interface was often DOS-based, and later, Windows 3.1 or 95. In hospitals, computers helped organize internal communications, replacing paper memos with internal email systems. Medical records were still mostly physical, but IT staff were slowly carving out a digital presence. Engineers and software developers were among the first to truly push computers to their limits, writing code, modeling systems, and connecting to early networks. Writers used basic word processors, while office workers relied on software like Lotus 1-2-3 or the early versions of Microsoft Excel. By the mid to late 90s, internet access was making its way into office buildings and homes. America Online became synonymous with this shift, flooding mailboxes with trial CDs offering free hours online. You didn't just go online, you logged in. The sound of your modem connecting was the sound of a new era beginning. The first computer we had in our house was a Dell Powerline 450DE, which we bought in May 1992. Our dad bought it because he needed a better way to keep track of the records at his optometrist clinic, though like I said earlier, he always kept physical files in a big, long drawer in his office. However, it didn't take very long for my brother and I to commandeer it for our own uses. 1994 was a good year for 2D video space games. And that year we got two, which etched themselves into our memories. The first was XATAX, a side shooter where you fly in this funky little ship, shooting down hordes of enemies level by level, with every fourth level including a boss fight. The process of getting the game to work was a challenge itself. First, you had to mount the game in DOSBox, and the code you needed to put in would become branded on your memory. It was, and I quote, Mount C/games/XATAX. then C, then hit enter when the blue prompt appeared. In the game, it was just using the up, down, left, right arrows while hitting the control button to fire, while the alt button detonated a bomb that would blow up all enemies on the screen. It was an easy game once you got the hang of it, but what we loved most was the chirpy little music, a classic of its era. The other game we got was Comet Busters. This game was hilarious, mostly because of a glitch. The mission was simple: blow up giant pieces of space rock and progress to the next level while not getting yourself smashed into by comets or shot by the flying saucer that occasionally came by. You had special abilities that could help you along, including a shield generator in hyperspace, which would make you disappear and then reappear on a different part of the map with a musical flourish. However, I don't know if this was unique to our game. Every now and again, when you hit hyperspace, your ship would reappear 10 times its size, and you'd have this giant ship sprite floating around the screen until you inevitably got blown to pieces. Even now, I remember my brother and I howling with laughter every time it happened, much to the amusement of our parents who would stand at the door watching us. Man, those were fun days. Some parts of that time are hard to explain to people who didn't live through it. The joy of finally hearing a dot matrix printer grind out a school report after hours of typing. The low-key panic of booting up your PC only to be met with a cryptic error message buried in your autoexec.bat file. The soul-crushing defeat of a blue screen of death after writing a report you hadn't yet saved. The adrenaline rush of installing a driver successfully on the first try, without needing to consult a spiral-bound manual or swap out a floppy disk. And then there was the sheer beauty of the Windows 95 splash screen. The way it faded in slowly, promising that, yes, your computer was going to work today. These weren't just quirks of an era, they were rituals. Even the noise of 1990s computers became part of daily life. The whir of a hard drive spinning up, the high-pitched shriek of a modem trying to connect to the internet, followed by that signature ding-ding click hiss, the mechanical drone of a case fan, or the rickety chatter of a printer chewing through endless sheets of perforated paper. Each sound was a signal, a language, a comforting reminder that your machine was alive and hopefully cooperating. The 1990s were more than just a transitional decade for technology. They were a time of personal investment, of getting your hands dirty, of truly learning how things worked. You didn't just use your computer. You became fluent in its moods and mechanisms. You knew the difference between config.sys and autoexec.bat, how to edit an INI file, or how to get your sound card to stop crashing your games. Building your own PC from parts was a rite of passage. You studied glossy catalogs, picked out motherboards and RAM like a scientist preparing for a mission. Troubleshooting wasn't just a task. It was a skill, one you were proud to master. Back then, a computer felt like an extension of your mind. It required your attention, your patience, your creativity. And when it worked, when a game ran smoothly, when a paper printed without error, when your modem finally connected to the internet, it felt like victory. You didn't take those moments for granted. They were earned. Today, we live in a world where our devices are sleek, quiet, and infinitely more powerful. A cheap smartphone can do more than an entire network of 90s-era PCs. But despite all this power, something intangible feels missing. We don't form the same bonds with our tech. We don't open them up, poke around, or learn their insides like we used to. And while convenience has its perks, it doesn't leave much room for wonder. That's why those of us who lived through the 90s computer era remember it so vividly. Not because it was better, because it wasn't. Not by the numbers, but because it was ours. It was personal. Every beep, every boot, every upgrade carried a sense of discovery. We weren't just users, we were explorers. And for anyone who remembers that time, even just a little, it's impossible not to smile and think, yeah, that really was something.
Come along, let's sing, where the joy will bring. Tune into the beat, feel the magic, it's true. Channel 19 on X, we're here just for you, for you.